These are 6 John Wayne films that turned from box office successes into cultural minefields, each one revealing a controversy that still divides audiences nearly 50 years after the Duke died. Wayne appeared in over 170 films, but a handful generated controversies that went far beyond bad reviews, from a nuclear-contaminated production linked to dozens of cancer deaths, to the only pro-Vietnam War film Hollywood ever made while soldiers were still dying overseas, to an Oscar campaign so tasteless it got Groucho Marx involved. Today we're examining the films that made Wayne not just a movie star, but one of the most divisive figures American cinema ever produced. The Green Berets. From nuclear fallout to political fallout, American soldiers were dying in Vietnam and protests raged across college campuses when John Wayne released The Green Berets in 1968, making it the only major Hollywood film supporting the Vietnam War while troops were still fighting. Wayne believed in this war, which wasn't an accident. December 1965, and he wrote directly to President Lyndon Johnson saying, "My father always told me that if you want to get anything done, see the top man," adding that we are fighting a war in Vietnam and I believe my organization can do just that, ending with, "I feel this picture can be extremely helpful to the administration." Presidential advisor Jack Valenti convinced Johnson to cooperate by writing that Wayne's politics are wrong, but insofar as Vietnam is concerned, his views are right, and if he made the picture he would be saying the things we once said. The Pentagon didn't just support this film, they bankrolled it. A-1 Huey helicopters, C-130 Hercules aircraft, A-1 Sky Raiders, and an 8-page equipment list including 1,500 black powder bombs, 6 times what a typical war movie used, plus a ton of dynamite and 70,000 rounds of ammunition. Representative Benjamin Rosenthal later revealed that the Department of Defense charged Wayne's Batjack production company only $18,623, while true costs exceeded $1 million, making this taxpayer-subsidized propaganda. 18 months of rewrites passed before the Pentagon approved the script, and they retained complete script approval throughout. Universal Pictures got cold feet in April 1967 amid massive anti-war protests, and Wayne stormed out saying, "These suits tell me this is an unpopular war. Well, hell's fire, can they tell me which war was popular?" Warner Brothers stepped in. The film premiered June 19, 1968 in New York and went wide on July 4, Independence Day. $7 million went into the budget. Wayne directed alongside Ray Kellogg, with Mervyn LeRoy doing uncredited work, and the cast included David Janssen as a skeptical journalist plus George Takei as Captain Negium. Takei missed 9 episodes of Star Trek Season 2 for the role, and later admitted he strongly disagreed with the film's pro-war message and felt the finished movie was very bad. Renata Adler's New York Times review from June 20, 1968, became legendary. She wrote that The Green Berets is a film so unspeakable, so stupid, so rotten and false in every detail that it passes through being fun, through being funny, through being camp, through everything and becomes an invitation to grieve, adding it is vile and insane, and on top of that it is dull. Her review enraged Senator Strom Thurmond so much that he entered his complaint into the Congressional Record on June 26, 1968. Roger Ebert gave it 0 stars, writing that what we certainly do not need is a movie depicting Vietnam in terms of cowboys and Indians, calling it cruel and dishonest and unworthy of the thousands who have died there. Leonard Maltin awarded his lowest possible rating and told viewers not to miss the now famous final scene where the sun sets in the east. That sunset gaffe, Wayne walking into the sunset over the ocean at Da Nang, which faces northeast on the South China Sea, became the film's most cited factual error. Other problems included visible Georgia pine trees filmed at Fort Benning substituting for Vietnamese jungle, a US-style water tower standing in the background, and Wayne at age 61 playing a combat colonel when the average Vietnam soldier was 22. Rotten Tomatoes today scores it at 23% from critics, but the audience score hits 61%. Commercial success followed despite critical hatred. Wayne claimed the critics overkilled me, the picture and the war, and as a result so many people went to see it that I had a check from the distributors for $8 million within 3 months. North American rentals reached $8.7 million in 1968, landing it as the 11th to 13th highest grossing film that year. 29 New York City theaters opened it on July 10, 1968, and it grossed $56,754 in a single day, setting a Warner Bros. 7 Arts record. Anti-war protests erupted at screenings nationwide. The German Peace Association in Germany appealed to ban all John Wayne films, and a Stuttgart newspaper compared The Green Berets to Kohlberg, the Nazi propaganda film from 1945. Wayne acknowledged the propaganda label but embraced it, saying, "I agreed with them, it was an American film about American boys who were heroes over there, and in that sense it was propaganda." Oliver Stone wrote his Platoon screenplay partly as a direct reaction to the Green Berets. The Alamo, Wayne's financial disaster and the Oscar scandal. The Green Berets was about Vietnam, but the Alamo tackled something more personal to Wayne: his guilt over not serving in World War II. Over 15 years of trying went into making the Alamo, his deeply personal passion project, which premiered October 24, 1960 in San Antonio, Texas. The budget exploded from $7.5 million to approximately $12 million, making it one of the most expensive productions of its era, and Wayne personally invested roughly $1.5 million after mortgaging his homes and putting up vehicles as collateral. Texas oilmen, including Clint W. Murchison, contributed funding with one demand: it had to be shot in Texas. Building the set at Alamo Village on James T. Shahan's 22,000-acre ranch near Brackettville required over 1.25 million hand-formed adobe bricks, 14 miles of tarred roads, and 6 wells providing 12,000 gallons of water daily. Historians called it the most authentic set in the history of the movies. Wayne wanted to play the smaller role of Sam Houston so he could focus on directing, but investors insisted he take a lead role, which meant he played Davy Crockett. Richard Widmark played Jim Bowie, and Lawrence Harvey played William Barrett Travis. What happened next became one of the most notorious Oscar campaigns in history. Russell Birdwell, who had handled Gone with the Wind, came aboard as publicist. A July 1960 Life magazine ad with the headline, "There were no ghostwriters at the Alamo," cost $152,000, and linked Alamo heroism to the upcoming presidential election, while attacking blacklisted writer Dalton Trumbo. Subsequent trade ads implied that voting against the Alamo meant you were un-American, and the Los Angeles Mirror charged Wayne was buying votes, writing that one's proud sense of Americanism may be suspected if one does not vote for the Alamo. 7 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, came from the campaign, beating out Psycho, which only received 4 nominations. The real scandal involved supporting actor Chill Wills, though. His press agent placed increasingly tasteless trade ads, and the most offensive one featured Wills superimposed over the cast with the message, "We of the Alamo cast are praying harder than the real Texans prayed for their lives at the Alamo." For Chill Wills to win the Oscar, Groucho Marx fired back with his own variety ad, saying, "Dear Mr. Chill Wills, I am delighted to be your cousin, but I voted for Sal Mineo." Wayne, furious about the whole thing, placed a rebuttal distancing his company from the cheap publicity stunts, and added that he refrained from stronger language because I am sure his intentions are not as bad as his taste. Groucho hit back again, writing that for John Wayne to impugn Chill Will's taste is tantamount to Jane Mansfield criticizing Sabrina for too much exposure. Bob Hope got one of his biggest laughs at the ceremony when he said, "I didn't know there was any campaigning until I saw my maid wearing a Chill Wills button." 1 Oscar for Best Sound out of 7 nominations. The Alamo lost Best Picture to Billy Wilder's The Apartment. Alamo historian Timothy Todish claimed there is not a single scene in the Alamo which corresponds to a historically verifiable incident. Texas historians J. Frank Dobie and Lon Tinkle got hired as advisors and demanded their names be removed from the credits. The final battle happens in broad daylight in the film, when it actually occurred pre-dawn at approximately 5 a.m. Travis dies late in battle on the ground when he was actually shot in the head on the rampart almost immediately. Characters react to the Goliad massacre during the siege when it occurred 2 weeks after the Alamo fell, and the defenders sing Happy Birthday, which is a problem because it wasn't composed until 57 years later. Top 10 grosser status in 1960 with approximately $7.2 to $7.9 million domestic couldn't save it from its $12 million budget. Wayne assumed enormous personal debt, got forced to sell his share to United Artists, and took what he called money rolls to stay afloat. He later joked that picture lost so much money I can't buy a pack of chewing gum in Texas without a cosigner. NBC bought television rights in 1971 before he finally shed all the debt. Psycho, budgeted at $807,000, grossed $32 million for comparison. The Searchers, masterpiece or racist relic. Things get complicated in a different way here. The Searchers, released May 26, 1956, occupies a unique position as both a film ranked among the greatest ever made, and one criticized for embodying the racism it may or may not be trying to critique. John Ford directed and shot it in Monument Valley, with Wayne playing Ethan Edwards, an unrepentant Confederate veteran who spends years searching for his niece Debbie after Comanche warriors kidnapped her. His driving motivation turns ambiguous throughout the film, rescue or murder, since she's been tainted by living among Native Americans. Wayne was so proud of this performance that he named his son Ethan after the character. The central controversy asks whether the film critiques or embodies American racism toward Native Americans, and arguments for intentional anti-racist commentary point to several things. Ethan stands clearly as an anti-hero excluded from civilization in the famous final shot where he remains outside while others enter the home. His racist counterpart Chief Scar gets parallel motivations because his sons were killed by whites. Part Cherokee Martin Pauly serves as the moral center who rejects Ethan's hatred. Arguments that the film is inherently racist point to different evidence though. Comanche appear as one-dimensional savages for most of the runtime. Henry Brandon, a white German-American actor, plays Chief Scar in brown face, and the look subplot where Martin accidentally acquires a Comanche wife and kicks her down a hill gets played for laughs, which remains deeply uncomfortable even to the film's admirers. Roger Ebert walked the middle ground, writing that in The Searchers I think Ford was trying, imperfectly, even nervously, to depict racism that justified genocide, and the comic relief may be an unconscious attempt to soften the message. Martin Scorsese called it deeply painful, and noted that like all great works of art, it's uncomfortable. Spike Lee went more direct, criticizing Ford and Wayne's films for dehumanizing Native Americans as savages, animals, monsters. Jean-Luc Godard captured the paradox perfectly, asking how can I hate John Wayne and yet love him tenderly in the last reel of The Searchers. Mixed 1956 reviews gave way to a growing reputation that exploded over time. The American Film Institute ranked it number 12 on their Greatest American Films list in 2007, jumping up from number 96 in 1998. Number 1 American Western came in 2008. The British Film Institute's critics poll placed it at number 7 in 2012, and the Library of Congress selected it for the National Film Registry in 1989. 87% from critics on Rotten Tomatoes with an average rating of 9.1 out of 10. Filmmakers cite its influence more than any other Western. Steven Spielberg watches it before starting every new project. Scorsese's Taxi Driver casts Travis Bickle as a direct descendant of Ethan Edwards, and George Lucas modeled the burning Lars homestead in Star Wars on Ethan discovering his brother's ranch. Buddy Holly's That'll Be the Day came from Ethan's catchphrase. Film critic Stuart Byron wrote in 1979 that in a broad sense it can be said that all recent American cinema derives from John Ford's The Searchers. 0 Oscar nominations upon release, which remains a remarkable oversight given its later reputation. The interview that changed everything. What ties all these films together and why they're viewed so differently today than at release needs to be discussed. May 1971 Playboy magazine and interviewer Richard Warren Lewis drew out Wayne's most inflammatory views. Wayne said on race that I believe in white supremacy until the blacks are educated to a point of responsibility, adding I don't believe in giving authority and positions of leadership and judgment to irresponsible people. On Native Americans, he claimed I don't feel we did wrong in taking this great country away from them, explaining that there were great numbers of people who needed new land, and the Indians were selfishly trying to keep it for themselves. On homosexuality, while referring to Midnight Cowboy, he asked, wouldn't you say that the wonderful love of those two men in Midnight Cowboy, a story about two F-words, qualifies as an example of perverted films? Snopes verified the interview as completely authentic. Decades passed with this interview sitting largely forgotten. February 18, 2019 changed that, when screenwriter Matt Williams tweeted screenshots that went viral, triggering coverage from The Washington Post, CNN, and the Chicago Tribune. June 2020, and following the George Floyd protests, the Democratic Party of Orange County passed a formal resolution calling for removal of Wayne's name from John Wayne Airport, which had been renamed from Orange County Airport on June 20, 1979, shortly after his death. Professor Fred Smoller from Chapman University stated that John Wayne Airport is Orange County's Confederate statue, its ode to white supremacy. Ethan Wayne's son defended his father by arguing his words were taken out of context, and claiming that if John Wayne was there when that policeman was kneeling on George Floyd's neck, you can bet that John Wayne would have pulled him off. The Orange County Board of Supervisors effectively killed the renaming effort, and the airport retains its name and 9-foot bronze statue today. USC removed a Wayne exhibit from its School of Cinematic Arts in July 2020. The shadow of World War II. One more piece of context explains Wayne's most controversial films, particularly the Alamo and the Green Berets. Wayne never served in World War II despite playing war heroes throughout his career, which created a shadow that followed him everywhere. Pearl Harbor got attacked when he was 34 with a wife and 4 children, and he received a 3A deferment, reclassified 1A later. Republic Studios intervened to get him reclassified 2A, deferred in support of national interest. Contemporaries who served included Henry Fonda with a wife and 3 kids, Jimmy Stewart, Clark Gable, who enlisted at 41, and Gene Autry. Combat veterans reportedly booed Wayne during USO tours in the South Pacific. John Ford, who served as head of the OSS photographic unit, needled Wayne about his non-service so relentlessly on the set of They Were Expendable in 1945 that co-star Robert Montgomery had to intervene. Pilar, Wayne's 3rd wife, said he became a super patriot for the rest of his life, trying to atone for staying at home. Asa, his daughter, wrote that the Alamo was Duke's confessional, an open letter to 150 million Americans, and the film tells more about John Wayne than about Texas in 1836. This context illuminates why Wayne threw himself so completely into the Green Berets, as the only major star willing to make a pro-Vietnam film, and why the Alamo became such an obsession it nearly bankrupted him. 2 more controversies worth mentioning. 2 other Wayne films deserve brief mention before we close. McClintock from 1963 features Wayne's character publicly chasing his estranged wife Maureen O'Hara through town in her underwear before spanking her with a coal shovel in front of a cheering crowd, and O'Hara wrote in her autobiography that Wayne carried it out with such gusto that she had bruises for a week. The film gets widely criticized now for presenting domestic violence as comedic romantic resolution. The Cowboys from 1972 generated controversy when Bruce Dern's character shoots the unarmed Wayne multiple times in one of the most brutal death scenes in his career, and Dern got typecast as a villain for years while receiving hate mail for decades. Wayne warned him before filming that when this picture comes out and audiences see you kill me, they're going to hate you for this. Dern replied, "Maybe, but in Berkeley, I'm a goddamn hero." Critics attacked the film's suggestion that boys achieve manhood through killing, and Pauline Kael wrote in The New Yorker that the filmmakers were in the business of corrupting minors. What do we make of all this? Wayne's controversial filmography reveals a consistent pattern where his most divisive films weren't accidents, but extensions of deeply held political beliefs he expressed with equal force on screen and off. The Conqueror's twin scandals of racial casting and nuclear contamination represent Hollywood's worst instincts in concentrated form. 91 cancer cases among 220 cast and crew members, 46 deaths, and whether radiation definitively caused those cancers remains scientifically inconclusive, but the shadow over that production cannot be denied. Conscious propaganda that Wayne championed despite industry resistance came through in the Green Berets and Big Jim McLean. He believed in these causes so completely that he was willing to direct, produce, and finance them himself when others wouldn't touch them. Personal guilt over not serving in World War II merged with Cold War messaging in the Alamo, which nearly destroyed him financially, but it mattered more to Wayne than profit ever could. The Searchers endures as the one genuinely great film among the group precisely because its racial tensions remain unresolved, allowing each generation to debate whether Ford and Wayne were critiquing American racism or perpetuating it. The 1971 Playboy interview remains the key to understanding these films together. Wayne's stated belief in white supremacy, his dismissal of Native American land rights, and his homophobia weren't hidden subtexts, but the text itself, spoken plainly and without apology. Modern defenders point to other aspects of his life, including his 3 Latina wives, his Cancer Foundation work, and his support for Vietnamese refugees. Critics argue that public honors shouldn't celebrate figures who championed white supremacy, and both positions have factual grounding. One thing stands undeniable. Wayne used his enormous platform consistently and unapologetically to advance specific political views, and sometimes those views killed people like with The Conqueror, sometimes they influenced policy like with the Green Berets, and sometimes they simply revealed the man behind the myth. Nearly 50 years after his death, John Wayne Airport still bears his name, his statue still stands in the terminal, and his films still generate arguments, which is probably exactly how the Duke would have wanted it. He never backed down from a fight on screen, and he sure didn't back down from one off screen. The question each of us answers for ourselves is whether we can separate the artist from the art, the hero from the man, the legend from the life. Wayne remains the embodiment of American heroism for some people, and for others, he represents everything wrong with that myth. For most of us who grew up watching his films, the truth sits somewhere in between, complicated, contradictory, and thoroughly human. If you've made it this far, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below about whether these controversies change how you view Wayne's films, and whether you can separate the man from his movies, and if you appreciate deep dives into Hollywood history that don't shy away from the complicated truth. Hit that like button and subscribe for more, because we've got plenty more stories where these came from. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.